too.
So talking about like medieval books on audio, one of my favorite books, it's not technically a medieval book. I mean, it kind of is, but Timeline by Michael Crichton.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's totally a great book. And then while you're at it, we got to throw Eaters of the Dead in there, or you got to throw that in there. That's a beautiful. And I love this perspective of the man telling, with the own eyes, I've seen these things. Don't think they're not true. And how the narration is, it had a certain amount of prose to it. That was brilliant. I love that.
Right.
I loved both of those. It's a little bit later, but also by Crichton, The Pirate Latitudes.
Oh, I've not done that.
That
Maybe
one's
I'll do
pretty
that.
good.
Yeah,
I found that one was pretty good. It seemed it was a little Disney for me.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly the word I was thinking.
That's
But it's still kind of fun.
You know, of all the Beowulfs, the Gerard Butler, I was so excited. I literally went to that opening day in some little art theater in San Francisco. I can get a ticket down there, and I see that, and he plays the most unheroic effing Beowulf ever. And all I could think is a whiny emo Beowulf. F you. This is not Beowulf. Beowulf is Beowulf's a Viking hero, a man in the hall, a man who brings people together, not a man contemplating how many angels dance on a pinhead. Get off the screen. I was just so. I didn't mind the humanization of the monster, but cannot Beowulf at least be cool? Can he at least be a guy you go, oh God, look at Beowulf? You know, I mean, got a whole saga written about him, and he's like a mopey guy running around who eventually does something.
Yeah, Beowulf should never be like an accountant.
No.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, we are up and running on Facebook, or not Facebook, on YouTube right now. And Seto will be here shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, he said something about yay computers. That's never good.
Yeah, it's, they always kick you in the butt when you need them the most.
I will say the one thing that's been good is I never thought I would be in a position to be a Queen's Artisan. It was such a surprise for this reign when that happened. And so I've had so much more time. And I always thought of, when with the Queen's Artisan, I think instead of fighting for the glory of the Queen, like when you're on guard, now it's do art for the glory of the Queen. So every time I put up like one of the Meyer videos or something, I like hit the button. I'm like, for the Queen. And I get to push.
That was a neat experience. I was one of Helga's artisans.
It was just cool to get a chance to serve in a way like you never pictured yourself being able to do it. So that part's been really enjoyable.
Yeah. Really enjoyed being in the fencing community and playing with those. And it's not like being in the heavy community, though. It's a very different community. And to play that kind of play and feel the noise of the steel and the conversation in your hand is so different. And the ethics and the ethos of the whole fencing ethos is so different. It was awesome to be a part of.
Yeah.
I can totally get that, where it's just different and exciting.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the fencers are doing some stuff, YouTube stuff or Zoom stuff, and I'll kind of look at that because we're not like the Pell work that we do on weekend or in the afternoons here. We don't record it. We don't, because it's not training.
Gotcha.
It's just encouraging everybody to get out and do it.
Hey, we have a Seto. Excellent. All right, gents. The rigmarole here. I'm just going to go over real quick and check. Hold on a second. Super multitasking because, of course, things did not go the way we wanted them to on several ends. Do we even have anybody watching? I don't even know. We've got 3 watching. Awesome. Excellent. So, folks, if you're out there and you're watching us, why don't you hit up our chat and let us know that you are here, because tonight's been a little bit of a craziness, and we want to get this going here pretty soon, and we're going to have a good time. But we want to know that you guys are out there and ready for the show.
If you're in the neighborhood, and you must be in the neighborhood because it's kind of not a very powerful radio station.
Exactly. Man, I tell you what. So I've almost got the new YouTube channel thing all settled. Of course, you have to jump through so many hoops, but pretty soon there is going to be a Ask the Knights live specific YouTube channel that will actually let me live stream to it and everything. And hopefully I'll have that up next week because Facebook has just been giving us such problems technically that
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's just easier for people to watch on Facebook. But then it's harder to actually get it on Facebook these days. And it's yeah.
I have heard that a lot about
easier.
the new Facebook format, that doing some of the event type things, the live stream, and because they want people to do their thing instead of this thing.
Right. They want us to use their thing, but they've got these plugins for Zoom, which is great, where you're supposed to be able to, go live on there. They're happy with that, and then even have it set up so where you can go live straight to your event. And it just doesn't work. I've checked everything from my level of internet and all that kind of stuff to my equipment, and it's just problems with the new Facebook platform. So who knows where it will go, but I know that we will go somewhere awesome because I have quite possibly one of the coolest set of guests ever. Everybody on this show tonight has been a guest of this show before, and I'm really happy to have you all back. See, this is the thing that I warned you about when you did your individual shows, that I would rope you in to these special editions. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, and we're going to get the show on the road here in just 1 second here.
Cheers to you, Logan. We appreciate you having all of us. Old Dukes
thank
love
you.
jumping on soapboxes along with old Knights.
All right,
It'll be fine.
welcome all and sundry to Ask the Knights Live. This is episode 26. Tonight I have the panel of awesomeness here to talk about Fealty. And not just Fealty, but the importance of it, what it means in the SCA, what it means personally, all that type of thing. And so I think that we should start with having these illustrious gentlemen introduce themselves. So I will say, Your Current Majesty, would you like to start us off? Just introduce,
Sure.
tell folks who you are and all that good stuff.
I'm Duke Uther out of the West Kingdom, and I've been playing in the SCA for about 30 years now, and I love the SCA, and I've had a lot of squires knighted and fought in a lot of crowns and have been fortunate enough to win a few, and it's just great to be with good friends here. That I know all these men, and I know what good men they are. I know that there's good advice coming tonight, so welcome everybody.
Thank you so much, Your Majesty. I don't know who is in the order of precedence between Duke Mark and. Oh wait, no, it would be Duke Mark. Sorry, Mark. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mark de Arundel. I'm a knight and a duke, also from the West Kingdom. I've been playing about 20 years, and I've gotten a chance to compete with a few different weapons forms and win some tournaments. And that being said, the thing I always aspired to was knighthood. So I'm really excited to talk about fealty because I think that relationship is what defines knighthood in the SCA. So that's exciting.
Awesome. And now we have the illustrious Count Seto, our foreign visitor for the evening.
Thank you for having me in these ethereal lands that's still far away. I'm Count Seto of the Mid-Realm. I've been playing now for about 11 years. I've been doing various martial arts my entire life. It's been a lot of fun finding out the SCA, meeting a lot of these good gentles, still some of them to meet. But it's been a really great place to have honorable combat and learn just all these medieval endeavors. So thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And so, our very, very special guest, Sir Leotov, who is on this show because he is one of the gentlemen whose words um, I admire and listen to the most. Sir Leotov, would you please give us a little introduction?
I'm Leotold of the Silver Hills, a Knight of the West. I've been playing for 35 years as of Labor Day. I have been fortunate enough to win a couple of Principality tournaments, but for me, the more important accolade is I have been fortunate to be the Queen's Champion a number of times in the West, and that was something that really brought home some of the ideals of fealty and those connections. You're muted, Logan.
Of course, I hit the wrong button at the wrong time. So again, gentlemen, I welcome you all to Ask the Knights Live. Thank you for coming on again. Thank you for letting yourselves be roped in to coming on again. And so before we start, I found a little definition of fealty that I liked. And it was written by Sir Francis Bacon. Fealty is it's a weird, not even a weird concept. It's just it's a hard concept to wrap your brain around in the modern day. At least it was for me, until I got to know some of these gentlemen who are sitting here on my show this evening, who made it a little more clear for me. So let me just read this little definition. So Sir Francis Bacon wrote, fealty is to take an oath upon a book that he will be a faithful tenant unto the king. So many early forms of the term were used in Middle English around the 1300s. And when they specifically designated the loyalty of a vassal to a lord. Eventually, the meaning of the word was broadened, and fealty can be paid to a country, a principal, or a leader of any kind. Fealty comes from the Anglo-French word filete or fealty, which comes from the Latin fidelitas, meaning fidelity. These words are ultimately derived from fides, the Latin word for faith. I put that last part in there because I thought it was important, because I think that fealty and fidelity have a lot to do with faith in not only who you are going into fealty with, or what you are going into fealty with, just because it's such a large scope. And it's faith that runs both ways, in my opinion. And so with that, our first question for you, esteemed gentlemen, is what is your definition of fealty? And unfortunately, Your Majesty, you're the top dog, so you have to go first.
Sure. So I can describe fealty in a lot of ways, but when I'm dealing with, generally it's with a squire or something, or maybe somebody in a household. And the way I describe fealty is a contract. It's a contract between me and somebody else, or the household and somebody else, for what I'm going to do and what they're going to do. And I think it's really important that the contract is as clear as possible. And therefore, there's often relationship ahead of offering fealty, because fealty, unless it's built into the contract, doesn't have a way out except for success, generally getting a peerage or something. And so I don't want somebody in forever fealty to me. It's not what I'm looking for as a household. But that might be different when I'm king and I accept fealty from the knights. Again, we're in a contract together. I have duties to the knights have duties to me. And that's also important to remember, because it isn't about being in charge, it's about fulfilling your role and on both sides of the contract. And one is not greater than the other, because a great example is with a knight and a squire. A knight should be learning from his squire when he's in fealty, and he's teaching the squire. That's an important part of the relationship. So when I took squires, I only took squires that I thought they could get knighted, and they had to want to be knighted. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend time with you, because my version of Fealty, and everyone's got a slightly different version, I was very intense about it, and it was like, we're going to get united and work on a process of getting you there. And so I think of Fealty in part, in my definition, is a journey through a process and maintaining the contract, and the contract is usually comprised of many oaths or the details of the oaths. And in the oldest term, like in Viking culture, you make a toast or a boast, or you would swear your fealty to the king. It wasn't as formal, I think, as it was in later culture. But what is interesting about that is the spirit of the law mattered more to the Vikings than it did in later period, where it was a much more organized concept where writing comes into play versus being an oral piece of information that could be, oral is a little more fluid. And so the intent becomes more important in the earlier period when you're reading sagas and things. When people break, then that was times called breaking troth. You broke troth to your lord. And then I also always thought, when you, in that contract, when you break the contract, don't be mealy-mouthed about it. If you're breaking the contract, go kill the king. If you're killing the king, but don't run around talking trash or do all these other things. And so I think when you're not keeping Fealty, I think it's equally important to own up. Now, I'm not doing my job, as well as when knight and esquire parts. I think, in that definition, if you break the Fealty, it's important to just be honest about it, whatever that is. So there's some thoughts around it. It's a complex topic, so I was a little meandering. I apologize.
Oh no, no. That was very cool and entertaining as well. All right, Duke Mark, how do you describe Fealty?
So for me, Fealty, it's about relationship. All of us have roles to play, and all of the virtues, we're talking about Fealty today, but all the virtues, they do this, right? They're all intertwined. So Fealty is the relationship. His Majesty has a role to play as king. I, as his knight, have a role to play as his knight. And we have a relationship that means that we are both serving each other in those roles. When I have squires, I have a role to play. The squires have a role to play. And like you said, it's not that one is above or the other, but we all have individual roles. And the fealty is the relationship and the agreement that we have between us. And so for me, in my conception, we have these ideals, right? The ideals of the SCA, and His Majesty and Her Majesty they serve as a living embodiment of those ideals. And so fealty to His Majesty gives me a personal connection. So if I fall down as a knight, I'm not just betraying or failing some high in the sky like ideals. I am letting His Majesty down. And that relationship, you feel that. And so that's why the relationship part of fealty is so powerful. If I fail as a knight, I'm letting His Majesty down, and that hurts on a really fundamental level, and it should. And so that's when I think of fealty, the relationship piece is the most important piece.
Excellent, thank you. All right, Count Seto.
It's so hard. I think like the last person, Leo Toffel, you get to the end where you're like, oh, all these people said these things, but you're still trying to expound upon it. And my biggest part about fealty is it's a promise. It's a promise between myself and the crown that I will do them as a knight, in this card as a royal peer, things I'll do for my kingdom and for them. However, it's the kingdom and its ideal in itself. And then therefore they have a promise to me to also fulfill their duties back to me as well. And that's the most important part. And then there's another one's my squires, my 5 dependents I have, they're in fealty to me, but then also in fealty to the crown. As me, at this point, like the representation of the crown is the pure, like, it's the person there. But something that people think about, and I'm not going to expound on this too much, is it's the idea and the concept. It matters who the person is wearing that crown as an individual, but the idea is always the same. I will still always swear fealty and work for the concept of my kingdom and this force to the society to uphold that fealty. And no matter what, I will do my best to try to do that promise to them.
Excellent, excellently said. And now, so Leotov, Ellen, Charlie, but there's a lot of good words. I'm sure you have some.
So a lot of how I view fealty has been spoken, but there's 2 sides to the promises of fealty. There's the things that the king has promised to do for me, and there's the things that I have promised to do for the king, whether he likes it or not. The Western Oath contains the specific to speak or to be silent. And that's not just a prerogative of those in fealty. It's an obligation. If I see that something is wrong, it's my job to say, Your Majesty, this isn't right. And then it's His Majesty's job to weigh those words and go, nah, you're wrong, or to agree. And if he says, nah, you're wrong, now it's be silent. But
the oath is speak or be silent,
yes,
or and be silent, not or, but speak
Yeah.
and be silent. And
Yeah.
so, so the crown is totally obliged to listen for sure and hear
Right.
you out because you have the king's ear in the promise.
One of the things that I did today in preparing for this was I actually went out online and pulled up the Western Oath just to remind myself. And then I pulled up the source code for the Western Oath, which was
So cool.
for every mundane person in America has at some point watched Pippin swear his oath to the stewards of Gondor. And so I pulled that up just to read through that and look at how it's different. And it's because the source material for the SCA is not just William Marshall's oath, it's Pippin's oath. And so that's important. But it's the obligations of the oath that for me define it. The promises are less important than the obligations that I incur by swearing that oath.
Excellently said. So one of the things that I really find the most interesting about fealty in the SCA is everybody remembers or everybody thinks about all the orders coming up and swearing fealty to when a new king and queen comes up. A lot of people kind of gloss over the fact that the new royalty has already sworn when they're crowned is swearing fealty to the kingdom. So you have the highest the highest in the land is swearing fealty, swearing to protect and look after the kingdom for that brand new person. You know what I mean? That the lowest person on the in the stratus. And then, but everybody, they focus on all the all the peerages swearing fealty up, and they don't think a lot about how it comes down as well. So I think it's great that it's like that magic circle, and I think that people should put as much thought and exuberance into the crown's oath to the kingdom as they do to the peerages and the rest of the kingdom's oath to the crown. And most of you have, all of you have sat on a throne of one sort or another and have felt the weight of that oath. So I would like for you guys to kind of give us an idea, maybe an inside view. I know you can't go into specifics, but an inside view of how sitting the throne and having that the weight of fealty to the kingdom, how that has affected you personally. And we'll go in reverse order, and we'll start with Sir Leotov. Go for it.
So I set the principality thrones for the Misks twice. And I will say that no single point in my SCA career has had such a profound emotional impact as swearing fealty for the principality, swearing to protect and defend those who I was supposed to be ruling over. It's for me, it was a long time to think about what might happen if I were ever in that position. But we swear, at least at the principality level, they swear a very similar oath to the oath that the knights swear. But it is fealty and protection. And it's, if you're not willing to take that oath seriously, don't even swear the oath at invocation before the tournament. That's, for me, that is the most important thing that we do, is we swear to serve and protect these people who have put us in this position of authority, or given us the lead role in the play is probably the best way to describe it. And our service to them is the single most important thing of any reign.
Count Seto?
That's such a heavy question in itself. Like, you think about when you fight that tournament and not knowing until you actually win one of those tournaments that you are going for this grandiose ideal of fealty to the kingdom, to all those around you, and then them receiving it or giving it back to you is one of the most awesome feelings that I've ever had. And in mundane world, like, think about, like, you become the CEO of this corporation or franchise that is your kingdom, and you want to make sure you take care of all your people below you. But back to the romanticized part of it, I think for me and His Majesty, I think now there was a certain level of realism that really made it real whenever we had COVID hit. And I know we had Gulf Wars going on, and everything was starting to bubble up, and people were like, should we go or should we not go? Your Majesty, should we go? And I'm just like, I want to go hit my friends with swords at Gulf Wars, but I want you guys to be safe. Luckily, the idea got taken, or the choice got taken out of our hands by the localized government. But at that point, I felt no more like the most like a real king, to be like, people go there and have fun or not. And that was the most purest form of, these people trust me and my word, and they're looking for me for guidance, but then I'm also looking to them and I want to make sure that they're taken care of. So this fealty in the crown in this game is actually really important.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was easy at all. Duke Mark?
So one of the first and possibly the best lesson my knight ever gave me as a scrubby unbelt is, he said to me that the king is the first servant of the kingdom. So I was raised with the idea never that the king was all about authority and privilege or all those kinds of things, that the king was the first servant of the kingdom. So we can say that my knight raised me right. But it's hard to express, like Count Seto, I'm a lifelong martial artist. So the idea of cultivation through martial arts was always a part of my life. So cultivation through heavy fighting and the ideals of the crown, the first servant of the kingdom, was very real for me. It was never pretend or a play or anything like that. So when I took the oath and the crown hit my head, like in my heart, for real, I was going to kill or die for my kingdom, for real. That is the thing. And there were times in all of our reigns where we had to make real decisions with real world consequences to protect the people. And I can liken it to, I'm also a high school teacher. And so I work with a lot of kids, and I would, and I've been in cases, because I work with some extreme situations where I thought I might have to put my body on the line to keep my kids safe. And the feeling is exactly the same. And that's the thing, is the SCA, it can be a hobby or a game or a lifestyle, depending on how people look at it, but the emotional relationships and the emotional components are real. So when I said I was going to protect my people, I meant that just as much as I meant I would have protected my wife or my students or anybody else. And it changed the way I saw my place in it. I think in a lot of ways, it's easy to grow up in the SCA being a consumer. You go to events, you have your fun. The SCA has set the stage for you to go and do your thing. And then when you start serving as the crown and you're in charge of trying to help set the stage for other people, you stop being a consumer so much and you start trying to be a producer for other people. You're trying to create the magic. And it's not that it's any less fun or any less magical, but your relationship to the entire process is different. So I like to think that I grew as a man and a human through doing my best to live up to the ideals when I reigned.
Excellent.
These are some great comments to follow. One thing I would say, the moment of Fealty, or let's say as it relates to being royalty, hits everybody at a different time. And I can honestly say, because when you're wearing the crown, you're kind of also seeing the sausage get made. You're in the background and you're in the back, and you see the good, the bad, the ugly, right? I would say when I've come up to swear Fealty, I'm so worried about not getting the line wrong to make sure that I got everything organized. I had 30 people behind me in a procession that I'm trying to get them all lined up, make sure they're happy, they're fed, I got all these other responsibilities. And when the real weight of Fealty hits me, it is always when I receive Fealty. I've had the fortune to reign 12 times now, or 13 with the Principality. And every time it's the peers coming up and giving you essentially their faith and return in offering you Fealty, and realizing that it's not Fealty to Anthony or Uther, it's Fealty as the king, and that you have a greater responsibility. And you are, as Mark said, and that greater responsibility, as a servant, and that brings that home dramatically. And I can tell you, one trait I hate in the SCA is someone goes, "Oh no, my Fealty really means something to me." I've never heard anyone say it means nothing. If people are out there swearing Fealty, it means to them, and we're all a little different. We're going to take it a little different, and that's nothing wrong with that. But I had a great singular experience when my 6th reign, I got a chance to be king of Ontir, an amazing, amazing kingdom. It's also a very royal kingdom, very supportive of their royalty. The people there are phenomenal. And in the Ontarian ceremony, it is not uncommon, but not universal, that the king will take homage from the populace. Now, in the West, where I was raised, I, as a duke, had squires and their household and all that, and their Fealty filtered through me to the crown and my household. And that's a different structure and way you think about it. And on Tyr, if you did not have connection to the crown offered you connection and took your homage and received it from you. And I can tell you, you've never seen the stars in people's eyes and the meaning that when you invite the populace, who never thought in many cases they would ever get a chance to be in that relationship of sorts with the crown, and seeing that from that populace was enlightening. And when I came back to the West, it wasn't always popular. I forever received homage after that, or offered homage to people who wanted it, because I wanted no one to be disconnected from the crown. I wanted everybody to have stake in the game. And I think the game is made better when you offer responsibility, stake, and inclusion. But inclusion isn't just, hey, you're included. It is, you're responsible. You have duties, and getting everybody playing that game. When you do that, that's when you feel Fealty. That's when Fealty really hits you in the chest, because you're doing the thing, they're doing the thing. You feel it and you see it in their eyes, and that really makes it real. And I think when that realness of relationship is, I think His Grace Mark said, that's when you realize how real it is and how much you're helping people, or making a better, making the SCA better, or a better world, or whatever, because you all are experiencing the same dream. And that's cool. And that's what I'm around for. I love that.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It sounds like me, or it sounds to me like that, that's a good idea, because I mean, this is it is a game, but it's a game that we're very invested in. I don't make oaths lightly. So like, this isn't just, it's not just a game that you can shrug off easily. Like, you can play lightly if you want. And if that's the case, then I would suggest that, maybe you don't swear an oath or fealty, if this is just going to be a casual thing for you. But I mean, if you're in there and you're making the relationships, and just the way this game is set up, I don't see how you can't make those strong relationships. I mean, you should take your oath seriously, I guess, is where I'm going in a really long and rambling tirade here. So, so let's get on to another question. Does that sound good, guys?
Yeah.
All right. So when handling personal fealty, so we'll take all the titles off and we'll just talk to you as knights here. When considering someone for your household, what is your process? Do you invite them into the household first, see how they work out? Is it straight to a that contract? And what are your pros and cons for the different styles out there? And this one I will toss up and say whoever would like to answer first can go first. Just raise your hand. All right, Grace.
So the number one thing I look for, it's actually very simple. If I died tomorrow, would I wish these people to be peers for the SCA? If I died tomorrow, would Claudia, would Connor, would Fred, are they the kinds of people, the kinds of peers I would wish for the kingdom when I was gone? It makes it very easy. In terms of the process, it's a little bit different for everybody. I think, with you, although we were great friends, because we hadn't spent as much time in the same kingdom, the man-at-arms to see if the relationship piece worked out in this exact way was a good fit. With Connor, I actually told him no, because he was only going to practice and wasn't going to a lot of events. And although I loved Connor dearly, I wanted him to experience other nights, because as much as we were good friends, maybe there was a better fit for him in that fealty relationship. With Eva, again, it was a little differently. So I think I take a little bit of an individual approach. Generally, I like to make sure that I have a relationship with the person before we enter a contract. And my mentality is always that I'm walking the path with that person. I don't ever see myself as kind of above that. So would I walk that path with this person? And then we take a little time to see if that relationship works before we enter into a contract that would be very heavy to break. Because once you're in it, you're in it. You're stuck. But the filter for me is always just if I was gone, when I'm gone, what would I wish for the SCA? And I've been blessed to be surrounded by really amazing people. So that's kind of my process.
I'll go. First off, I love what Mark said. I think he echoes a lot of what I think about in my household. My knighting process evolved a little bit, but pretty rapidly. I landed on, you're a man-at-arms for a year, and after a year and a day, we have a conversation. Do you want to move to being a squire? Do you think I'm that much of a jerk? Are you done with me? We go, do we like each other? And in our household, when we were doing more official household things, that was also, you were initiate for a year, someone sponsored you. At the end of the year, if you still liked all of us and that worked, you could be that. But as far as how my criteria for choosing squires, a little different than Mark's. I just had to believe you could get knighted. And it wasn't about you being a big gorilla and being athletic. It was actually more about, do I think you're going to put the work in? Do I think you care? Does it really matter to you? Because when I take you on as a squire, your success fundamentally matters to me, maybe more than it's going to matter to you. And I don't want to drop the ball. And the reason why it matters so much to me is we all have our versions of fealty. We see that. I see it's my job to bring knights to the crown and to fulfill that circle, that one day when I leave, die, move on, have too many children, can't come to the SCA, whatever, I've left knights behind me to fulfill the role that I was holding, that someone else put the work into me for. And so that's a lot of how I think about the choosing and getting people into the process. And the last thing I would echo with Mark is, he said, walking alongside of. I don't think the worst quote, I'll leave the man's name out of it. He said, well, chivalry is just self-evident. Like, read a book, it's easy. And I'm like, no, it's complex, it's hard. And if you're not steeped in it and raised in it, it is hard. But I think anyone can be taught to be a knight. It's not outside of anyone with good intent and good effort to be a knight. And so if you have the heart, and I mean heart, because it's not going to be easy, then we can get you there. And I'm taking that walk with you. And as Mark said, once you get past that man-at-arms thing, it's ride or die till you make it, or you fire me, and then I don't talk to you anymore because we're not drinking beer because you're no fun. And that's how that is.
That's awesome. Your Majesty, we're having some issue with your video. We're not getting
Oh.
your video. We can hear you just fine.
All right. I'm
But-
not good looking anyways. It's all good.
What are you talking about? You're one of the best dressed kings ever.
Well, the 14th century knows 14th century, right? Seto's
Damn
looking
straight.
good too. Mark, we love you, Lutov. We love you, man.
I couldn't find my coat, Hardy. Everything's packed right now.
Right. Okay. Who would like to go next?
I will.
Sure, go for it.
So for me, a large part of it is, would my wife allow this person to sleep on our couch? Because when I take a squire, that's, she and I are a team in this. I might be able to teach him something about fighting. She's going to teach him all the stuff that's actually important for a knight to know. And so she is heavily involved in the process. Like His Majesty and His Grace, my squires are given that year and a day man-at-arms with option. They can pretty much opt in or out at any point in that year and a day. My squire Samender, I made him my man-at-arms at Beltane, and we talked a lot. And it was about a month later, he said, okay, so what do I got to do to become your squire? Okay, now this is a different conversation, but he, 2 months after he became my man-at-arms, he had made the choice and the decision. And like His Grace was talking about with his squire Connor, I want my men-at-arms to experience all the knights they possibly can, because if I'm the only knight, that's not a choice, that's a lack of options. And so I made him go talk to people about what being a knight was and what being a squire was before I would actually agree to be his knight.
Excellent. That's I really like that. Like, forcing folks to get to know other people just to make sure.
And for those of you who have met my squire Samender, forcing him to get to know people is exactly the right phrase.
You got to pet his dog, and then he likes you. And then he'll talk
Yes.
to you. You pet the dog.
Count Seto?
So, a lot like these other gentlemen have said, I agree on the whole 1 year and a day. COVID messed up some things weird, so I was just thinking about this and talking with one of my man-at-arms. I'm like, I know this is very unprecedented, but people are getting made peers. That part, do you want to talk about this more? Or do you want to wait? And she still needs to think about it and talk about it. But all my other squires, it's someone that I think I would like them to be able to become a knight. And just like His Majesty was talking about, I used to think I'd only take people that I think could become knights, but there are some people that are not necessarily older, but they're people that we have a relationship with, and they want to have a deeper relationship with me on becoming knightly. And not to say I'm the font of all this part, but I can help a person become knightly or I can facilitate them. Now, you don't have to become my squire or dependent to do that, but there is my first squire, Aza, originally. She'd probably never become a knight. She doesn't have the time, she doesn't have the heart, but she is one of the most knightly individuals. And you better believe it, everything else that she have will be on par, but she just probably won't be able to fight that well to that level just through the life, and she won't be able to put in the time to do that. And everyone has their kind of creed on that. But to me, it's someone that, one, I like to trust them to be able to sleep on my couch and they trust them as family. But also, I want them to be knightly, even if they don't ever become a knight or recognized as a knight. So that's why I see for my fealty, my dependents.
Most excellent. That reminds me of advice that I was given by my knight, who said, concentrate on being knightly, not becoming a knight. And that's very important advice to me. Like, probably the best advice I've ever gotten on the path. And Yeah, I appreciate that, Your Grace. All right, so we have an excellent question from Deborah O'Leary. And I'm going to read this exactly the way it's written, and then I'm going to try and make sure that I'm saying it the right way here. So the question is, how is the fealty relationship similar or different to relationships with SCA officers? And what I'm guessing her meaning behind that is like the mundane officers of the SCA, the folks who take care of all of um, the background work. It's not really a fealty type contract, but there's a lot of similar feelings. I'm guessing.
You're actually in fealty to most of your officers, by the way.
Well, there you go.
So they come up during the ceremony. So all the principal officers, you swear fealty back to them in the process. And then the secondary officers are going through them usually. So if you're not swearing fealty to the officer, they're rolling up to another officer who is in fealty to you more directly, generally in the West anyways.
Oh, okay. What about the society as a whole? The society's officers, the bod and everything. I know, like, it's a really weird thing because they're a corporate entity, but they kind of have like the same mandate is to keep the society as a whole safe and secure. Does that?
I think the reality of that is when you swear office into being the crown, you're upholding the kingdom laws, traditions, and that's almost universally in most oaths of kingship. And somewhere in there, essentially in some verbiage, depending on the kingdom, you're also expected to uphold corpora. And if it's not explicitly said, it's implied in multiple locations. And if you break that, you could put the kingdom in jeopardy. So by ergo, you are in a sense of fealty to the office you've sworn into, puts you in fealty to that, because fealty almost generally works in a hierarchical sense where everybody has responsibility in that tree. Would anyone think that's wrong or disagree with that?
Well, my question is does that is that reciprocated by the society officers, the bod, the folks who are in charge of corporate? I mean, you would almost guess it would have to be, but
I think at a society level, I don't want to keep talking. So if anyone else wants to jump in here, it's just something I have thoughts on. So, but the reality is your kingdom officers, you certainly have a relationship with, you interact with them, and your fealty might become called into question to support, protect, or defend them. And it's very common to have an officer, somebody not listening to your officer, not following kingdom law, not doing what's correct. And the king is the enforcement arm behind that officer, and your fealty to that officer is very relevant. For the bod above you, in a perfect world, you're not dealing with the bod ever. Because if you deal with the bod, it's like calling the police. Nothing good has probably happened. You know what I mean? A break-in has occurred, right? Or something's gone south. And so in the bod aspect, we don't really interact with those officers. And then when you do, and might have lost me, but when you interact with those officers, they're in charge, and you're trying to facilitate a peaceful resolution for your kingdom and your fealty.
And I would agree with that. For the most part, it's the only other time you might talk to the bot was when you're trying to enforce other policies that might change your kingdom or the society, where it's not so much like, oh, who are we going to lock up, but necessarily you're trying to make a change that is going to affect the society as a whole. Now, them in fealty to us, I'd say not really, no, because they're kind of in their own governing doctrine. So it's a little bit different as far as when you're working with your populace or people within the society, that part. Does that make sense?
oh yeah.
It does to me.
So one joke I like to make a lot is that the bod is kind of like the Catholic Church in Western Europe.
Yes.
Within their purview, they kind of have ultimate authority. And in a perfect world, the church and the kingdom, they work together to make the world better and keep everybody safe. And sometimes you have to negotiate between the two, like His Excellency was saying, that there's policies and things. And then often people who serve on the board often are peers, so they are in fealty to their respective crowns, but they have to function in their role kind of in the church setting, so to speak. So that's how my medieval mind kind of puts those two things together.
That was really well put, Your Grace. I like that.
Yeah, that's a really apt description. Sir Leotoff, do you have any input?
I haven't had a lot of interaction with society level officers except for the marshalate, because I've been very active in the marshalate for most of my SCA career, and some conversations with various society earl marshals. I do know that the board members that I have known, I have respected, but I don't think that there exists a fealty relationship in either direction really between the board or the upper level society officers, other than those that are personally held, like when they're their peers themselves.
Gotcha. All right. I have a really good question from the audience here. We have for Laura from Atenville. I hope I'm saying that right. If not, feel free to correct me. The question is, how do you coach students about whether or not they want to be a peer who has to swear fealty? Basically helping someone through deciding if they want to be a knight or a master, or as opposed to a master. Go for it.
So I have thoughts on this one. To me, but once again, I'm prior military. I was an airman, and no matter what, the people that had their jobs, my sergeants or whoever, colonels, I respected their rank above them. I maybe did not like that person, but I respected their rank, and I gave them that due. So in fealty wise, to me, I think it depends on what a person understands about fealty. It does not mean you do no matter what that person says, the king or queen. You are there to do your job and help them do their job. So as far as masters and knights, we'll talk about this one. The master knight thing is originally mostly before religious views, and it was more if you cannot swear fealty due to your understandings or that wise you're like, I can't do this. Now, that doesn't mean you can be a master, at least in the mid-realm. There are tons of masters that still have chains, and they do it more of a persona-wise, that they still swear fealty in this. So I think you can talk to them about what fealty actually means and what you're giving or taking when you actually go into that relationship. And that's how you can talk about that discussion a little bit more. That's just my thought on that.
Excellent. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Your Grace.
It's going to sound a little repetitive, but so one thing, the best advice on fealty I think I ever got was from the man that knighted me, and that was Duke Merlin. What Merlin said to me is that fealty was easy when you liked the king, but it was more important when you didn't, because it's all about those relationships. And when you're a knight, you're in fealty to the crown, but you also have that relationship piece to the populace. And if you have concerns that a king might do wrong by the populace, then it's incumbent on you as a knight to make sure that you are upholding your fealty so that your voice can be heard and you can stand up for the people that perhaps have a harder time standing up for themselves in regards to the crown. That said, masterhood is not a super common thing that happens in the West, so my experience with that is more limited. But it is important for people to understand that you cannot be a knight without being in fealty. So if you think that you are not going to be in fealty, if you have a religious reason, if you have a personal reason that fealty is problematic for you, that I think you need to have a serious look at the mastery thing, because if you are not in fealty, you're not a knight. You can be knightly all the live long day, but you cannot inhabit that station and relationship without being in fealty. And so I think sometimes people maybe don't put as much thought into fealty as they should, and then they run into that conflict and, well, I'm not gonna be in fealty to this king. It doesn't work that way. If you're a knight, you're in fealty. And it's more important, like Merlin said, to be in fealty and use that relationship if you have concerns with the crown. than to just not. And if you think for some reason that fealty is problematic for you, then you should definitely look at the master route. Although, like I said, that is not super common in the West Kingdom. So.
Awesome.
Sean, do you want to answer?
So I kind of look at it like voting. For those individuals, like His Grace was saying, who say, "Oh, I'm not going to be in fealty to this king," then shut your pie hole about the things that the king is doing. You have abrogated the prerogative to speak if you're not going to choose to be in fealty. I think that fealty gives you a greater voice, in part because the king has sworn, the crown has sworn to hear your voice. I will honestly say that at no time in my life did I ever consider the possibility of being a master, because for me, fealty was the essence of what I wanted to be in the SCA. I wanted to be a knight serving my crown directly, which is the essence of the knight's fealty. And for me, when I talk with my squires, I do talk to them about, so what do you think about this idea? And I've had all of them read, or most of them anyway, read the oath that we as Western Knights swear, and have them think about the different pieces of it. What do these pieces mean to you, and could you swear it in good conscience? Because if you can't, then maybe the master is the road for you.
So for my part, the first part of the question you said, about, how do you interact with them or take them or whatever. I don't take apprentices who I think or squires, I should say, that I think are going to become masters. I guess it could happen, but generally I'm a knight and I make knights, and my job is to bring knights to the crown. And I fundamentally agree with Mark. What Mark said, that relationship is exceedingly different. And I believe in the oath. And I understand the personal thing that Seto said as well, that hey, it's trying to let people who have different religions or different things where it's really important, and they can't reconcile it, right? But ultimately, I think one of the things in knighthood that is a hallmark of being a knight, and this is where I think knights fail or win, is that it's easy to be a knight and be in fealty when things are going great. Everybody loves the king. The king's handing out free beers. The tournament was awesome. The queen was handing out roses. I mean, woo! Banners up on the Eric. Let's go. Who doesn't want to be in fealty then? That's when it's easy. When it's hard is when you don't agree. And then I've seen knights tap dance around their fealty and like, I'm not breaking fealty. And I've seen some really stupid things, because I think part of your fealty as a knight, by the way, is to make the kingdom run and work. And when you don't like something, speak and be silent. And I've seen people have a really hard time being silent. I saw a bunch of knights get into it with their king at Out of Kingdom War that just blew the war up for everybody, because they were gonna have their squires fight with the other side and they're mad at the king, but we're gonna fight with you and keep our fealty, and all this complexity. And all it was just kind of a mess. And if you're in fealty and you're showing up to fight with the king, you bring your household, your squires, and you do the deal, or you don't. And if you don't, say, I'm breaking fealty, I'm going to kill you, you're the king. That's cool. I mean, at least you're owning it, right? And so when you talk about like masters, and I deal with masters and things, I think they have a responsibility to the kingdom, and I try to treat them intellectually as knights, even though their oath is different, because I think most masters take responsibility for the kingdom. And that last piece is, I think when you swear to be a knight, it's thick or thin. It's not just at the good times, it's the bad times. And that is, in my mind, the true test of your fealty and your chivalry, is when things happen that you didn't like, that you weren't the person making the kingdom worse. You were the person trying to make the kingdom better, because ultimately, if you don't like the king, or some tragedy happens in the kingdom, maybe a fire happens and you're trying to raise money or whatever, you can make a difference. And that's when your oath really matters, because if you didn't like something in the kingdom or the king, he's going to go away. Let the kingdom work until he gets off the throne. Don't make it worse. Or if there's a tragedy in the kingdom, you can step up in a position of leadership and fulfill your oath. And the masters will do that as well. I think the masters have done some great stuff in the West Kingdom. And so it's a little long-winded around this topic, but I hope that answers some questions in the area of how I see that. And so the masters, I see them a lot like knights who have a personal difference. But I totally agree with Mark. I'm not a master and you're not a knight, and that's okay.
No, I don't think you're overly long-winded at all. And the thing that I love about this, so you folks at home can't see this, but I can see it. You know, you see the person who's talking, but you don't see all the other folks. But I love this so much because anytime one of my guests is giving an answer, I see all of my other guests just going, their heads are just nodding, and it's like, you know, they all have they all have a slightly different take, but they're all in agreement on this one. That's pretty cool. So, gentlemen, we're getting close to our hour. Actually, we hit our hour, but we started a little bit late, so I wanted to throw in one more question from the audience here, and this one's kind of heavy. So we won't be completely done after this one. I'll give you guys the time to lighten up a little bit. But so this one's kind of hard. So this question is from August, and they ask, what are the steps you have taken if you feel a person or a peer is not upholding their oath of fealty? Now that's, you know, granted, if you've ever had this problem, or what would you do if you had that problem? So you don't have to be like, you don't have to tattletale on anything specific. Yes, we'll start with you, Grace.
So I've had this question both on the throne and off of it. The number one thing I do, and I think you have to, is you go and you speak to that person directly. Too often, and knights are guilty of this too, too often people, they gossip, they talk behind their back. I remember very clearly in my first reign, there was an issue and a knight brought it up in council and, oh, this things. And I said, have you spoken to that peer directly? No. Well, then we're not talking about it. You have to go and speak to the person directly. You know, it's the SEA. I sometimes joke we are the last bastion of the socially inept. You know, some of us are, you know, we're a little socially awkward, or we're worried about confrontation, or we're not sure how to broach it. But especially, you know, one of the things I have faith in is no matter where I go, inner kingdom, out of kingdom, that is my brother knight over there. And so if I have a concern, I'm going to go talk to my brother, and either I was mistaken, or we had a difference in perspective, or at the very least, we can have a real and honest exchange. And because we're brothers, if we get a little irked at each other, we're going to work past it. That is what you do. But the number one thing you have to do is you go and speak to that person directly. And I think anything else is BS until that happens.
Excellent. I've got the gallery of nodding heads. I love it. Who would like to go next?
Seto, come on, you're our guest. Why don't you say something cool?
All right, I'll do my best. As far as with the breach, it depends on what the breach of fealty is. I mean, I think first and foremost is always you cut off the whole hearsay and you actually go talk to that person. But you actually understand what they're doing and what the problem was, and actually then figure it out by first, it depends where you are in the whole social structure. I mean, let's just not gonna lie. There's kings, there's queens, there's counts, there's dukes, everybody. Talk to your peer if you have one. And if you don't, find a peer that you find that you trust and ask, hey, can I ask you about this? So and so did this part, but I'm not really sure how to talk about this or this. And seek the understanding at the lowest level that you can without spreading it. It's not like you're spreading and gossiping. You're trying to understand, you're trying to fix the problem, and you're trying to see. Because most peers, I mean, in my heart of hearts, I believe, most peers, when you take that oath, if you did such things, you actually want to uphold that. So whatever happened, or maybe an understanding, they would hopefully want to understand that and fix it too, and be like, oh, I didn't see it that way, or maybe I didn't. So a lot of times there's a lot of misunderstandings. But that's just me trying to see the best in people.
Agreed. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Who wants to go next? Sir Leotov?
So, you know, as His Grace and His Excellency said, it is imperative that it be met head on, it be handled directly, because the grapevine is a killer of relationships. I have been in that position where not me directly. Well, me directly at other times, but specifically where someone else came to me and said, I feel like this individual is not upholding their oaths. And I said, well, have you talked to them? They said, no, I'm afraid to. Okay, are you physically afraid? No, they're just kind of intimidating. Okay. Would you like me to go with you to talk to them? Oh, would you do that? Yes. So as in our case, as peers, it's our job not to let somebody who's in that position spin in the wind. They have to have support. And even in that, we're not judging. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I feel like this peer has done X, I'm not judging the peer by going with them. I'm saying this needs to be talked out, and maybe they want a neutral person to listen. And that, to me, that's very important. The flip side of that is when it was me needing to address something with someone above me, I made sure that it was just the two of us so that there weren't any ears around to go, ooh, he said, because you never want that.
Yeah, it's a difficult choice between having an arbiter and having privacy. I always love that old saying, two people can keep a secret as long as one of them's dead. And sometimes some of these matters are very delicate, and that's the kind of interaction that you need. But I also 100% understand wanting or needing to have someone to go with you in order to talk to someone about something that's problematic, especially if it's something, or I will say, a trigger for you, for something that you may have a problem with.
So for me, I think
Okay, sir.
there's two distinctions. One, when I'm the Crown or Duke Uther, obviously the Crown I think has a larger responsibility because you're supposed to be where the buck stops, right? And then the first thing to discern is it a matter for the king or for mundane authorities? So if someone brings something to me and we should be calling the police, the first thing I do is I call the police and I don't try to sort it out. Because if someone's breaking fealty in the sense or misbehaving as a peer or anything else, and it's a legal matter and that kind of thing, it's not even about the insurance and the SCA or any of that. It's outside of my ability to get you justice. And what I'm going to do is connect you where justice comes together and make sure you feel protected. Same thing as Duke Uther, if something like that comes to me. If it's a peer who's done something stupid or whatever, I like the old motto, you make the apology as public as the incident. And that always seems to help. But the first thing that always starts with, I like where people said, you talk to that person privately, you hear their side of it, you don't make them feel attacked, and you try to suss it out, right? And then the other thing is, before you enter that conversation, you should have some graceful resolves in your back pocket. You should not go into that not knowing what you're going to do at all. You should go into that conversation with a path to clemency for that person, if at all possible or practical, right? There's things that you will not receive clemency for in the SCA and will bounce you, leave the children alone, leave the money alone. But that being said, other things, you should be bringing solution or helping that person get to resolution and solution and show that the redemption is not only possible, but worthwhile. And hopefully you can get them to that. I've had several instances with King where I've had people self-isolate or banish themselves from groups. There was a toxic incident, and I said, look, you make me a personal promise with the Crown that you're going to do not interact with this group for 12 months, and you're going to do X, Y, and Z and do your own thing. And after that, if you guys want to come back together, that's great. We're going to leave this as a file in the kingdom, and nobody has to know anything more, and no one gets banished. Unfortunately, the SCA king, as your king, you have banishment and talking to. You have very little in between, and that is a problem. And so I've often found those kind of personal agreements with people and showing them the error of their ways and letting them feel like you're doing them a solid in the conversation and offering redemption. I think that's one of the problems in modern cancer culture is people get canceled, but they don't get, all you make is bitter people because they don't get a chance to redeem themselves or correct the action if they want to. And not everybody's going to be willing to, but those people who want to be better, want to correct, to want to know they screwed up, it matters, and I think that's a good thing as a peer providing that opportunity for squires or whatever. I've seen calibration conversations be settled by just, as these guys said, matter of misperception, as well as bad dialogue or not good communication, and those things can all be improved.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the Middle Ages, or at least the romanticized Middle Ages, was the idea of, someone did a bad thing or made a mistake, and their punishment was to be sent on a quest to learn about what they did and why it was wrong. So I understand, as the king, like you said, you have the total smackdown and the talking to, and very little in between.
Yeah.
I would love to see, the quest for people who can be redeemed. Now that's not, you did something very bad, and we're going to try and cover it up, and we're going to send you on a fun thing. No, I mean just for minor faux pas or whatever. I would like to see that come to fruition. Does anybody else have any ideas? No, just me. Okay. So, gentlemen, unfortunately, our hour is up. I could sit here and talk to you guys all night, and if you gave me my druthers, I would, and I'd all be getting, messages from your ladies telling me to shut up and get off of the video. But I don't want to do that because, I want the chance to drag you guys back on my show again. So we will go ahead and end this for the evening. But before we do that, I want to know what you guys are watching and or doing and plugging while we are in this fantastic era of the SCA online. So tell us a little bit about the stuff that you're doing or the stuff that you're watching. Your Majesty, go.
So I'll give you a series of books. It's my current favorite crush of books, and that would be the Ill-Made Knight. I think the Ill-Made Knight series is just brilliant, and it is the I'm forgetting the name of the author, but it's like a large book series. It's not the one by the individual Ill-Made Knight, the older version or older book. That series, I think, with William Gold in it, tells an amazing story from squiredom to becoming a knight and a man of great station, and I love that. And that was an audiobook, and I listened to it like 3 times during the pandemic already. So
Is that Christian Cameron's books?
Kristen Cameron, thank you so much, Seto. I appreciate that. Kristen Cameron, by the way, if you Google his name, the first picture you'll see is him in a full 14th century armor with a pole axe fighting over a barrier. How much more manly can an author get? That man rocks it.
That is awesome. Yes, I encourage you all to go check out that series. Your Grace?
So every week I'm releasing a YouTube video. I have a series called Backyard Basics. Right now we're focusing on Meyer's longsword plays from his 1570 book with an eye towards application in XVA heavy combat because I'm a longsword specialist. And then the Saturday before Thanksgiving, Duke Thorfinn, Duchess Eva, and myself are going to do a show on the Known World Fighter Practice page on chivalric virtues. And we'll be coming at it from a few different lenses, including more the sagas, more the Arthurian, Victorian, idealized chivalry. So hopefully that will be fun. Please come join us so we're not talking to an empty universe. And other than that, I'm being manic and buying more and more home gym equipment and just working out constantly in this time. So yeah, that's what I'm up to these days.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love the Myers videos. Well, all your Backyard Basic videos. I'm telling you, if you guys are looking for, beginner through more advanced stuff, those Backyard Basic videos are awesome. You can also catch them on the Ask Knights live page because every Sunday after Duke Mark posts them, I shamelessly steal them and throw them on the page. So
I appreciate that.
but you should definitely be following his YouTube channel. and also the Ask Knights live page, because who doesn't want more Duke Mark? Count Setup. I know that you've got a couple things.
So, this has all been interesting during this time. My friends and I, Douglas Santiago, Kyle Potts, and myself, made a YouTube channel called The Wandering Sword Project. And you're gracious enough to check out your channel and see that, because basics are always awesome. Like, always use more basics. But check us out in the Wandering Sword Project. We're kind of all over the place right now. We're trying to show different things. We originally had plans where we were going to travel to Japan and follow Yasuke, the African samurai, and his path, which was the basis of my character for the SCA. And we're doing a lot of scholarly studies on him, but that's kind of been put on hold. So now we're doing some fun things, like we just had a Jason video, or it's Jason Voorhees, and we talked about the machete, and we're trying to bring this fun to martial arts, with sword stuff everywhere. And my last big plug is I'm finally starting to work on training for the Battle of the Nations for 2021 in Romania. Yeah. And I've been watching these guys like Your Majesty and my friend Brad Chivy and all these other people, His Majesty Felix, do this. And I never had a chance to actually do the Battle of the Nations except for when they came to the States. And hopefully COVID all gets together, and we're allowed to go, but I really want to start training for that and make that team for Team USA. So that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would suggest that when things simmer down a little bit, that you get with Duke Mark and do a segment with him, because damn, is he a good teacher. Seriously.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I would love to.
You'll
Love
know.
to.
And I'd love to see the two of you working together. You know, I've been watching your Wandering Sword Project videos, of course. And I really like all the interactions that you've done with all the people who've been that you've gone to for like lessons, or for insight into their specific stuff. It's really, really great stuff. If you guys haven't been
Thank
watching,
you.
yeah, jump on there and watch it. I mean, what else are you going to do in the pandemic? And you may get an idea of something else another hobby that you want to try. You know, the SCA is a hobby of hobbies.
I mean, you can only do so many reps and then you get tired, so you gotta sit down and rest. So
It's
yeah.
true. It's true. So, excellent shows. Sir Leotov, what
Uh,
do you suggest?
well, I've been hosting since April 1st. We've hosted every night a Pell motivational Pell practice. It's not really training. It's get out there and do something. Get out there and do a little bit to try and maintain or advance your art through the COVID. The pandemic's been rough on a lot of us. And then for the mind, reading a number of books. I recently bought a book on Old Norse poetry that I'm kind of slogging through, and watching a lot of the various, like Netflix has a number of medieval-ish movies and series, some of which are really good and the rest of them aren't. But trying to do a lot of the remind myself why I love the SCA, because I'm not getting the big thing that I love with the SCA, which is the people.
Absolutely. And as we were discussing before the show, we all feel pain on that. Gentlemen, thank you again for being a part of this show. It means a lot to me. It's just one more thing that gets me closer to the things that we're missing right now, and that's gathering together. If we can't get together and fight, and we can't get together and game and dice and and do art and all those wonderful things that make the SCA fantastic, the least we can do is sit around our 21st century fire, which is our electronics, and talk to each other and tell stories and get to know each other better and have a good time. And I appreciate every single one of you for coming on the show and doing that with me. It lifts me up, and I know a lot of people enjoy hearing us chit chat. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you, Logan.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great night, guys.
You too.
Absolutely.
Take care.
And to all you folks at home, thank you for watching. I hope that you're weathering everything safe and sound. Don't forget to watch our sister show, Between Two Peers, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. They're going to have Duchess Eva on tomorrow night, who is one of my favorite people in the entire world. And yeah, it's going to be a good show. So good night, everybody. Thanks for being on. We'll see you next